But my question was to the idea of the pressures that come from the outside. I don't disagree with you about, as you describe mission and how you connect. And certainly the affordability conversation of Ivy Tech is an extremely real one and a valuable one. But this was more of a look at what we see news-wise. How does a place like Ivy Tech deal with those kinds of things? How when you have students who believe who maybe come in and maybe believe that this is the way it should work, even though they're new to the school, or students who believe that this should be allowed or shouldn't be allowed, those kinds of social things, that is a big part of what we're seeing on the university side, rightly or wrongly. We're seeing it. Does Ivy Tech ever engage those things? Does it have to deal with those things? And how, as president of a university, do you explain this to the students?
I think our culture is something that's very special. And we, so diversity, equity, belonging, that is who we are. We accept everyone in our institution. We are inclusive. We don't spend a lot of time on worrying about what the outside world is saying. If you do your work well, if you have your mission focused, if you're serving your students, serving employers, meeting the needs that are out there, I don't think you have to be overly distracted by these other things. I can tell you, my team and I keep focused on how do we serve students and how do we make sure that what we do is aligned with what the communities in which we live need. And again, 93% of our students are going to stay right here. There's not a lot of reason for us to get distracted by things happening nationally. What I do want to be very attentive to is what's happening in Indiana. What are we needing to help Hoosiers succeed and help Indiana communities prosper? And when we do that together, good things happen.
Talking to Dr. Sue Ellspermann, president of Ivy Tech Community College. Of course, campuses all around the state of Indiana. It is Indiana's community college. We will have another conversation another day about DEI and how it plays out. But you talked about your graduates and the people who graduate, 93% stay. How do those graduates break down? Is it mostly men? Is it mostly women?
Yeah. So if you know anything about higher education, it's about higher education overall is about 60-40, 60% female, 40% male today. We are about 56% female, 44%, usually like 43, and there's 1% who won't tell us. But it is, we are fairly close to 50-50, and we believe that's important. In fact, for me, I want to make sure that as many young men are coming to post-secondary as women. We all need post-secondary, right? We don't want to leave anybody behind. In terms of serving the state, we look a lot like the demographics of the state, right? African-American, Hispanic, all the diversity that you would hope to see in a community college. And we continue to strive to improve and make sure that we are not leaving anyone behind. Traditional age students, adult learners, single parents, the single mom with 3 kids. We need to be that place where everyone can come back. So we're 2/3 part-time, which, sometimes people think when they're thinking post-secondary that every student is 18 or 19 or 20 years old and going full-time. No. In fact, that's actually the minority nationally. But community college is where you see that adult learner who comes after work, in addition to, having children to care for or other dependents. And we have to be the place that can flex to meet that adult learner's needs to succeed.
So when you bring up the percentages, men and women going to Ivy
Mm-hmm.
Tech, okay, I'm asking about graduates. Who graduates from Ivy Tech and then goes into that workforce?
That same demographic, right? It's the same. Well, it'll be very close. Very close. Our goal is to have no disparity in terms of outcomes. but it is very close, and happy to get those exact numbers to you. But we will complete over 40,000 credentials a year, right? For our students who will then graduate and go out into the workforce. That is about 10,000 of those roughly will be associate degrees. The rest of them will be all those other shorter term credentials and certifications that help them to achieve their career goals. So it is, graduating is the reason we bring people in, right? We want them to enroll, be retained, and then complete in the program that will get them a great career.
I'm going to one more step in this part of the conversation and then move on to some other topics. Do you think that universities as a whole are built in that 50-50 model in terms of the attracting men to schools and men to graduate? You brought up men specifically in your conversation. Mm-hmm. Or is there, in your view, for all the talk of the quote unquote diversity conversations that exist out there, is there on this subject a total lack of recognition that that maybe there's been a push to exclude men in this conversation about higher education, and certainly the need for graduation?
You know, I don't think there's been any push to exclude anyone. I think as time has gone on, and look, Tony, I'll talk about when I started college, right? It was just the opposite. I was a female engineer. I was one of 10%, right, of engineering students who were female at Purdue back in the late 70s, early 80s. It's still more male than female in engineering, still, 50 years later,
in engineering.
40 years later. But as we look at higher ed, I think women got the picture that you needed something post-secondary to be successful in career and life and be able to be self-sufficient. And they went. Men have, I can't tell them all the reasons why they did what they did, but there were options for men, whether it was more physical labor or other things that didn't require a post-secondary credential, which gave them options that maybe were not as open to women at the time. Today, there is no doubt that we need to have as many men, as many African-American men, as many Hispanic men, as many of every background, every ethnicity to be coming to post-secondary. We need everyone to have that post-secondary credential. So we are working deliberately to try to increase the number of men in nursing and the number of women in IT, right? We want diversity in every field of study, and we want to make sure that we are open access and welcoming to all.